Crackdown, a game that has two very different versions that existed in history. Pre-release, it was Microsoft's Zone of the Enders. It was simply a Halo 3 beta delivery mechanism in the eyes of many gamers. Then post-release, it became a different story. A massive city run by various gangs and a future where a group called the Agency dispatched superhero agents to go out and fight them head-on. Soon after its release, all of the hallmarks Crackdown was known for would infect anybody who actually gave it a chance. It grew far beyond the mere bonus that shipped with the Halo 3 beta. You have things like kills for skills, the hum of agility orbs, and transforming vehicles are all embedded into the minds of anybody who played the original game. A sequel followed, but it was a massive letdown despite adding 4-player co-op, and it seemed the simplicity and feel of the original would never come back. It took a very long time. A reveal here and a cloud there, but finally Crackdown 3 is here thanks to Sumo Digital. Right away I'm going to go a different route and discuss some of the things I think are a bit of a step down from the original game. One of my favorite elements of the original game were the agency vehicles. Each one of them were very unique, and even at level 1, your driving skills would level up and the transformed states of each of those vehicles was always a satisfying moment of gameplay. Crackdown 3 opts for an all-in-one agency vehicle with a very futuristic look. This one vehicle now transforms into 3 different forms as the driver level increases. The 3 vehicles aren't bad per se, but I missed the real-time transformation each vehicle brought to the table. I was excited about maxing out my driving level just to see how different each of the 3 vehicles looked, and that entire aspect is gone completely from Crackdown 3. My only other real complaint is something that's a bit tougher to explain. Agility orbs and stunt circles were 2 aspects of the original game that once again became beacons for players to follow into the city. In the original game, everything from the player's starting point, the drive into the amusement park, it all felt very carefully constructed. Each agility orb and stunt circle in the world felt very carefully placed. Their placement felt like the perfect balance between player freedom and just the right amount of teasing of what you can't reach just yet. Just like when you felt you found a way to get that one agility orb or stunt ring, you would always catch a glimpse of what lies beyond. That balance was essential to what kept Crackdown such a gripping experience. An open world action game with the precision and exploration of a great platformer. The platforming is what truly made Crackdown stand above other open world GTA clones at the time. Crackdown 2 was a massive letdown because it failed at maintaining that balance. Crackdown 3 does a far better job at coming close, but it doesn't quite have that same special balance between platforming precision and the tease of the next level of agility to obtain. Stunt circles follow a similar trajectory as well. In the outer edges of the city when you first begin your campaign, agility orbs can sometimes feel like they were just chucked like dice across the environment. Stunt circles can be placed in seemingly impossible areas, and then you will have a handful of others that require you to just drive up to a ramp and fall off the edge of it. They don't feel engaging or tease massive jumps in the way the original did. Agility orbs seem placed at random with no regards to how you start the game and what a new player can access right when you begin. Now this only really pertains to the early phase of the game, as the deeper you go into the city, the better the placement of those same agility orbs and stunt rings becomes. It seems like a trivial issue, but to me it's important. The build up in Crackdown 3 feels sudden. You start the game in a very short amount of time, it seems like you're already at the mid-game. There's not a gradual ramp, it feels more like a superhero leap. Now with all of that being said, those are really my only problems with Crackdown 3. In every possible way, this game is the sequel I have wanted since the original launch more than a decade ago. For the handful of things that feel like they don't quite measure up to the original, this game outclasses it in every other regard. Right up front, you're treated to an incredible opening cinematic with a very pumped up Terry Crews playing Commander Jackson, giving his crew of agents all of the motivation in the world. From that moment until you beat it, Crackdown 3 presents a much more cohesive and solid narrative than the original even bothered to try. New Providence is the city, and it's ruled by a matter-of-fact group called Terra Nova. New Providence goes for a far more sleeker, Demolition Man-style future vibe than the real-world feeling of Pacific City in the original Crackdown. I love the new environment. The various districts encircle the Terra Nova centerpiece with towering skyscrapers built to overlook the polluted slums and people they rule over. A high-tech monorail flows in and out of the city, and the entire look feels like it's straight out of a graphic novel. Visually, the entire game pops, with enemies, your agent, and weapons causing massive amounts of destruction. Some larger battles can literally fill the screen with explosions and chaos, but it's all very easy to keep track of. All of the weapons look unique, vehicles are interesting design-wise, and the day-to-night cycle is phenomenal. One of the biggest highlights of the original Crackdown was the game's incredible draw distance, and I'm very happy to report that it comes back in full force for Crackdown 3. Audio design is also back and better than ever. Crackdown's impact was largely due to the graphics and sound really combining to make small moments memorable. It wasn't just that you could see the agent leveling up, it was the swirling and the suction of air around them. The pulse they let out as the agency voice broke down how much better you became was a signature, and that returns in full force. Every orb, weapon, and explosion stands out and really helps sell the superhero aspect of your character. Even beam weapons have a nice heft to their sound design, which goes a long way toward making them fun to use. Speaking of weapons, the weapons and gadgets and tools the agents have at their disposal have grown considerably. Standard weapons such as shotguns and machine guns have been accompanied by things called the jackhammer, the mass driver, and gadgets called the replicator. It almost feels like they took weapons that feel like cheat codes and incorporated them into the sandbox of creativity and destruction for you to experiment with. It's always fun to explore and find new weapons to play around with, and the game encourages you to experiment at your leisure with those weapons. Even better is the combat. The lock-on mechanics of the original return, but the enemies have seen a massive upgrade. Terra Nova employs enemies of various types, from drones and armed guards to mechs that shoot acid and hurl huge boulders at you. Each enemy type comes equipped with unique weapons, visual design, and have several different elemental affinities and weaknesses. The balance of enemy weaknesses, weapon variety, and tools the player has leads to a much stronger combat dynamic across the entire game. Most times in Crackdown, you can merely jump right next to a boss and roundhouse kick them to death and be on your merry way, but that's just a little bit harder to do in Crackdown 3. Even the bosses you hunt down are varied and different. Everything from a two-story mech to a hostile AI with an army of robots doing her bidding. Each boss is highlighted with a very slick motion comic motif that emphasizes the graphic novel feel and sets the stage for their showdowns. Rounding out the package are the multiplayer options. Now the tried and true co-op of the original returns, and it's just as good as ever. It allows you to select your partner before you even boot up the game, and if you have a friend to play with, you can experience the entire game front to back as a duo. Also included in the multiplayer suite is a mode called Wrecking Zone. In fact, the campaign and Wrecking Zone are two separate launchers. A curious choice, as competitive multiplayer has never been something this series was known for. Wrecking Zone is the home of the now infamous cloud-based destruction people have clamored for since the first tech demo years ago. What is on hand is not as broad as what was displayed in that tech demo, but in all honesty, that was always billed as a tech demo and nothing more. What Wrecking Zone does do is deliver on the promise of cloud-based destruction, and although it loses its luster after a few rounds, it does impact the gameplay in a meaningful way. It's a far better idea and mode than the competitive multiplayer Crackdown 2 tried to implement, but it still doesn't compare to the campaign in terms of lasting power, despite the fun I've had with it. The omission of any kind of party system was baffling, but as of this writing, they have been addressing it, and it will be coming soon via an update. Wrecking Zone is a novel idea, but not one that will last for any length of significant time. Crackdown will always be a series centered around its non-linear campaigns and the creativity the toolset gives players to be their own brand of superhero. Kills for Skills makes a grand return, and Crackdown 3 is a sequel fans of the series have been waiting patiently for since the original launch. Make sure you pick it up. It is an 8.6 from me. This is the Rectify Review. I am Dave Rodriguez. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see all of you next time.
Agility orbs, Agent. Go get 'em.